Top of the morning to you. Today we are looking at the booze bash plate for the fuel tank for my Pajero, which is an NT. Sits squarely in the middle of these ones. Now I do currently have a full set of booze bash plates. There is a video link if you look up in that top right hand corner. You'll see a card which will take you to that video of the install of the rest of the booze bash plates. And because I found the other products to be so good, when I put them on, I thought I'd grab this because I wanted to get the full set anyway. I was kind of regretting not buying the fuel tank guard initially, and obviously they've got a good reputation on the Pajero for them. No affiliation, obviously. We've got a few extra brackets. When you're under and having a look at the fuel tank, you'll notice there are some brackets and whatnot that the current plastic fuel tank guard is actually held on by. And I was a bit curious about that because they're not very thick, certainly not compared to the brackets that we've got here. I am glad to see that there are some additional brackets and we're not going to be relying on the ones that are holding on the plastic plate. Now with the other booze bash plates, they all do come with instructions, as you see here, very well outlined, and instructions are great. And for the most part you can usually ignore those. It's pretty much, take out these bolts, put plate on, put bolts back. But for this one, it's quite specific instructions in how you want to approach it. There's a number of different brackets, supposedly they're all numbered, and we are going to have to reuse some of the stuff off the original. So I'm going to be taking my time with this, and I'm going to be following the instructions step by step. So this will be coming under the car with me, and these are some additional bolts that we need. While we're doing the intro, I do also have this. This is the TC mod, traction control mod from Vlad off the Pajero forum. What this is going to allow us to do is to have the traction control operate whilst we have the rear diff lock on. If you don't have a Pajero, what happens is when you turn the rear diff lock on, you lose traction control altogether, which is quite the disappointment because the traction control on the Pajeros is awesome. And there is a little vid that I've got where we went and did the Freeman's water hole, and you'll see the difference between the traction control and the rear diff lock. In that situation, the rear diff lock certainly wasn't as effective as the traction control, but there are situations for both. We will be going away in about 8 weeks time up to Bylong 4 Drive Park. They've got the wombat holes, and hopefully once I've got this installed, I'll do a video on that as well. I'm going to get to test this out, and we'll show you what wins, traction control or the rear diff lock. Anyway, let's get into this booze bash plate, and we'll get under the vehicle, get everything set up, and we'll get stuck in. Now we're under the fuel tank guard, and you can see that here. Remove the factory plastic tank guard. The cross member will have to be lowered to remove this guard. Ensure that nuts and bolts are kept. They're required for the install later on. And there's the dog helping out as per usual. There's some up there. One up there. And we'll just keep going around. If there's any that are out of the ordinary that I can't actually spot just by eye, I'll give you a shout and we'll have a look. Now there is one other thing that I've noticed, and that is that the filler pipe comes in here and actually has an attachment point to the guard itself. So I'm going to sort that out right now before I forget it and go to drop it later on. So we're just going to squeeze that and push that back through, so that's no longer attached there. Whether the new guard has that or not, I don't know, we'll find that out when we get to it. When you get all of your bolts undone, that you're confident that all of your bolts are undone, I was finding it was sort of hanging up on this guard here for the drive shaft, just catching the lip. You'll see here, up on top of, like I said, the drive shaft there. So what you need to do is just grab it, put a bit of weight on it, and just pull down, and you'll know when it's ready. You'll know you've got all the bolts. The rest of it will move. It'll just be hung up there somewhere, and you'll notice that it's just hung up on the lip on the back here. It's similar to this side here. It'll just be caught on that, so just give it a bit of a weight. It's only plastic, and she'll drop down. We are at the section we've basically got the rest of the guard out, and you can see that this portion needs to drop down under the fuel tank itself, which is now hooked up on this guard here. And I had heard Michael say that some people cut these, but I don't want to do that near the fuel tank, just in case. So we need to back these off quite a bit more than I thought I would. So we'll get into that, and then we should be able to drop this out from underneath. Now, just a point of advice, or a warning if you will. If you're going to drop this cross member like I have, you'll see these are the bolts that go in here, so that's roughly how long you've got. Once they drop out, this is under a little bit of tension. You can see it's providing some support across there. So it will pop down once that last bolt looses, and you're not pushing this back up by hand. So what you'll see here is I've got a floor jack, and I've got that up underneath, and I've just put enough tension to lift it back up to where the bolts will go in, and then we'll put that back into place. So if you're dropping the cross member, a bottle jack or something like that would do, but I've got this on ramps at the back, so this is elevated even more than the 2-inch lift. So you're going to need something with a bit of reach, or at least a few chocks of timber, just to push that back up, because I don't believe you're going to be doing that by hand. Instructions go on to say that all of the brackets are numbered, and you will see that they are, and you can see them lined out there. Then it says to take the bolts that you were supplied and fit them with the bolt head on the inside, which is what we've done. So you go around, there are 7 of those. Coincidentally, there are 7 brackets, and there are 7 holes, which is up here. And I believe we're going to use that bolt that you can see there, and we're going to mount or affix bracket 7. Okay, so that's the usual 14mm bolt. Keeping in mind I am on my back looking up under the car. This is our number 7 bracket. So there's our first bracket fixed. That's at the front of the fuel tank. You take the nut off there, off the front of the fuel tank, just to give you some sort of idea. This is our cross member here. There is a large bolt hole and a smaller bolt hole. The large one goes to the top for the factory bolt, and then the lower one is going to be the bolt that was applied with the kit, which is 8mm, and thus the smaller hole. Now put that on, but don't tighten it up just yet. You're going to need to make some adjustments. Now we're going to the rear of the vehicle, and we're going to undo this bolt here, which is closest to the outside of the vehicle. So there's our wheel. There is one there, and there is one on that side as well, near the drive shaft. But we're going to undo the one closest to the outside of the vehicle. It's bracket 3 fixed. In case you're wondering, you're going to need to have this slant, I guess, almost coming around the shape of the fuel tank, if that makes some sort of sense. You can see there. Rather than going the other way, because you will note that that is the slant of the fuel tank guard. Angle going as if it's turning under the fuel tank. All of them will be the same. We'll undo the nut on the other side now, once we've tightened this one up a little bit. Keep in mind that this is supporting your fuel tank, so put a few turns on there, but not enough to tighten it up too tight so you can't move them. So that's number 3. We're going directly opposite for number 4. And you are going to need a decent length extension. Now I just want to make this recommendation whilst I'm under here and kind of figure this out as I go. Before attempting this, run your fuel down. Get your fuel tank as low as you can, because you're actually undoing these bolts here. One there, you know, the one at the front, and they support the weight of the fuel tank. So they're holding onto that lip up there, and that's supporting your fuel tank. So when you want to undo these, because we've got this one undone a little bit, you know, we've only tightened it up a little bit, put the bolt on so we can still have some movement in here, the whole fuel tank will start to drop. Not sure if you can see that moving there. So to tighten those back up, you're actually pushing on the fuel tank to raise it up to get these nuts on. So do this with the least amount of fuel in the fuel tank as possible, and that's going to make your job that much easier. I wouldn't want to be doing this with a full tank of gas. And a good bit of warning on the instructions here is don't undo both of these bolts at the same time. Do them one at a time, fix one, and then move on to the other, because they are both holding onto the rear end of this tank. And if you undo both of them at the same time, you know what's going to happen. It's going to drop down. Don't do it. So now that we've got that front bracket mounted, number 7, and then we've come to the rear and done 3 and 4, you can now slide the tank guard up onto that cross member, as you can see there, and that's going to support the weight of the guard itself. So that's supporting the guard. You now come back here and fix these bolts. One on this side and then one on the other side. So the same with the bolts coming from the inside, with the head of the bolts on the inside and coming out, and the brackets do bolt to the outside of the frame. They will fit the other way, I can tell you that for certain, but they want to go on the outside as per instructions. Now we're back on the driver's side of the vehicle with the dog, and we're going to go bracket number 1 onto this point here. So there's the front, that's the one we just fixed up. Coming down the driver's side, number 1 is going to go on here, and this is where you're going to use one of those nuts that you took off originally, so make sure you keep those. So number 1 is going to go there. So that's number 1 fixed there, number 2 there. Now I actually had to go and get and fit number 2 first, and allow that to apply a little bit of upward tension to the fuel tank, because number 1, for the life of me, I could not get to go on. So what I've had to do is back this right off, literally, and the instructions do say just put it on a few turns. I had tightened it probably halfway and found that I could not get this to come down and line up with this bolt. So what I've actually done is loosen this right back, like right back, to give me as much stretch as possible. Put a knee up on the bottom of the tank, grab it from the other side and pull this way, and then I was able to get that to match up and tighten up. I do have these ones at the back still loosened off, so possibly the tank is dropped a little bit, which is making this a little bit harder to tighten up. So I guess when we get around to tightening up, we'll tighten those ones first, which will actually pull the tank up, and then we'll tighten the guard up. Tighten. Yeah. Okay, so number 5, pretty straightforward. Up the top there, and down the side here. Now this one is probably the easiest bracket to get on out of the lot, but prepare yourself for the bitch that is number 6. We've taken off that bracket that was originally supported, and you know you would have had to get up there to get that bolt up in the back there. We need to get this bracket up there and use again one of the original bolts that we had. So when you take these bolts out from here and up behind the transfer case, keep those, because those are the ones you're going to need. Because we're on ramps, I can almost get up here. There's the hole. Where's the hole? There is the hole for number 6, so we need to get the bracket up there and the bolt into that. So that is number 6 done. It goes up there. What I found was if I laid with my head at the front of the vehicle and then sort of reached this hand up, right hand up over the back there, it was a bit of a stretch, but I was able to get that up there and in, and then come down and tighten up the nuts. Before tightening up all of these top bolts, those ones around here, go around and tighten these up. Now they're an 8mm bolt, but they're a 13mm spanner. A 13mm socket and a 13mm spanner. Tighten those up. Get those done before you start tightening these up, otherwise that pulls up close to the fuel tank and you can't get a spanner in behind some of those. Now that they're all done, supposedly we come back to number 1 over here, we start tightening and we go around, finishing off with number 7 up at the front here. But what I'm actually going to do is go and just tighten those ones at the rear, number 3 and 4 I think it was, that are actually supporting the weight of the fuel tank. I'm going to tighten the top nuts up on those, and then we'll come around and start back at number 1. So for tightening that one, just that's number 3 I think, closest to the rear wheel. I just use an extension, and I'm actually cheating using the air ratchet. But for getting to number 4, get yourself a ring spanner and go over the top of the drive shaft, and you can tighten that up that way. That's it, guys, we're back. We've taken the car out for this obligatory rattle run, but if you're just having a look at the original one here, you can see the amount of dust and crap that is up under there. So be prepared, wear your safety glasses, because when you start pulling these things out, all that dust just comes down straight on top of you. I don't think I've ever been as happy to be out from under a car. It's a big job. It's taken at least a couple of hours, just fiddling. Follow the instructions, follow them pretty much to the T. The only thing that I might say would be a little bit different is that rather than putting all the bolts in, as it says originally, into the actual one, I would just have them all ready, just sitting right by hand where you need to put them in, because you only undo them again to then put them back in. So just have them handy. You don't necessarily need to put them into the holes as it says per step 1. One other thing, there is this little plastic clip that sits at the rear, and it clips up like that. So you will need to undo that, but I found if I just pulled on this, once I'd undone all the bolts, this clip just come undone and popped out on its own. It's a big job. It's certainly a lot harder than doing all the bash plates. Maybe save for the transfer case, because that's a bit of a fiddle. But certainly, obviously, you know, I was able to do it as one person. 2 people probably doesn't make too much of a difference. It's probably more a one-man job. Definitely want some sort of jack on hand to be able to reposition that cross member. But other than that, it's yeah, it's a good mod. You can see it's a nice finished product there. All I've got to do now is get it tested out. So thanks to Michael at Booze Bash Plates for getting this to me. Thanks very much, guys. Look, if this was helpful, I appreciate a thumbs up. You know, if it was mildly entertaining, that'd be nice as well. Trying to grow the channel and put a few more videos up. So it'd be nice to get the support and know if you're actually enjoying the videos and if they're actually helpful and I'm doing the right thing. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.